What's going on, guys? This is Uche Njoku, and welcome to the Sneaker Principal Podcast, Office Hours Edition. It's the end of my day. It's Friday, and told myself before I leave today I have to record content. It's been a few days, and so here we are. We're going to talk about something that I think shouldn't be even a conversation, and that thing is digital communications, specifically social media, the power it has on our society, on our children, and why schools are not finding ways to truly take that space over. And yes, there's a lot of bad things with social media, a lot of issues there, but it's a lot of bad things with everything. But how do we harness the power of social media in our classrooms to really increase engagement? So let's talk about that.
When they see me, they know that every day when I'm breathing, it's for us to go farther. You know, every time I speak, I want the truth to come out. You know what I'm saying? Every time I speak, I want to shiver. You know, I don't want them to be like, they know what I'm going to say because it's polite. They know what I'm going to say. And even if I get in trouble, you know what I'm saying? Ain't that what we're supposed to do? I'm not saying I'm going to rule the world or I'm going to change the world, but I guarantee that I will spark the brain that will change the world. And that's our job, is to spark somebody else watching us. We might not be the ones, but let's not be selfish, and because we're not going to change the world, let's not talk about how we should change it. I don't know how to change it, but I know if I keep talking about how dirty it is out here, somebody's going to clean it up.
And now he's been promoted. His job, principal.
So this is a hot topic. Let's be honest here, but it's also a lukewarm topic. It's something we've been talking about in education for years now, well over a decade now, ever since social media became a true presence in society. Ever since we had to tell kids, get off your phone because they're on YouTube or on Instagram, or if you want to go further back to all the other spaces that existed, MySpace, where kids were getting engaged in technology in a way that we had never seen before. I mean, literally just sitting there and consuming visually. And they're using their thumbs to communicate with other people around the world. Like, talk about engagement. And let's be honest here, social media companies make their money off of engagement. You know, how much time people are spending in that space, you know, either consuming or interacting with others. That is $1 trillion space, right? But then in our classrooms, in our schools, what are we struggling with? Like reduced, or in some cases, non-existent engagement. And I'm like, how is it possible we're seeking engagement from our students, but we also know what they're engaged in? Are spaces that we're telling them that are unsafe or they're a huge distraction to their education. My question has been, how come we don't participate in that space? Why do we find ways to harness technology in ways that creates engagement for us in the things that we know that our kids need to be engaged in? And it's funny because you hear everything. You hear people say, no, they're like the hardliners. Like, absolutely not. You know, I'm not even, I mean, the number of times I've had people tell me, like, I don't even have social media. I look at them and I say, okay, that's interesting. But those of you who follow me know I have social media. But also, it's a space that I've used for good. At least I like to believe, and it's something that I realize how powerful it is. I walk into spaces now, and I have people who will walk up to me and say, "Hey, you're the sneaker principal," and I'm like, "Huh?" And they're like, "Yeah, you're the sneaker principal. I watch your content." I've had teachers say that to me. I've had students say that to me, and not even my students. I've had administrators, I've had people who run school systems around the country who at events have walked up to me and said, hey, I follow you. And I think like, wow, like, and I want to say, why do you follow me? But what's interesting is those who've told me have said, you know, you're saying a lot of things that I agree with. You're saying a lot of things that I never thought about. And I'm like, huh. So here I am doing the one thing that schools struggle with, and I've struggled with myself as well, is ensuring that there's engagement, you know, in my classroom, in my school. And so the question is, how do we create that? How do we replicate that in our classrooms, in our school buildings? How do we get kids to say, listen, I love going to school, but when I'm in school, there's something that's tickling my brain in ways that hasn't been tickled before. And that's what's happening. There are things that they're consuming and that's going through their minds and they're keeping them excited. That keeps them going back. Social media is addictive for sure. But I think we can create a good addiction in school if you find ways to really harness it. But first of all, I think we need to get past this whole notion of just digital literacy. Like every district around the country has some kind of digital literacy program, some kind of digital safety program. I'm like, that's amazing. That's great. You need to listen. You need to learn how to be a defensive driver. You need to learn how to drive. You need to take those classes. But eventually, you have to drive, right? You got to drive at some point in time. You can't just be like, I'm just, I'm driving literate. I am driving literate. That doesn't make any sense. Either you're a driver or you're not a driver. But you can't say, I'm just like, I know how to drive and that's it. And then you never drive. Because guess what? You don't know how to drive. You might know how to turn the car on. You might know how to put the car into drive and maybe move the car a few inches. But if I tell you, let's jump on a highway, you probably say, no, I'm good. Because again, your whole entire understanding of driving is just based on safety and not driving. And I say that in schools. If you're going to teach, digital literacy, then we need to also teach content creation. The fact that our kids consume, when I say ours, I'm speaking in the space that I've worked in, urban communities. Our kids consume so much content, whether they're watching videos or podcasts or following their favorite influencer. They're consuming so much of it. But how much of that is actually educational? Or how much of that is actually pushing their thinking? How much of that is making them better? Very little, okay? But the reality is a lot of that content that will make them better doesn't exist or is just buried in the internet. So I ask myself, what if in English language arts you say, hey, we're going to do a poetry unit. But not only are we going to do a poetry unit, not only are we going to read poems, sonnets from Shakespeare, and maybe we're going to do a cross-reference to Tupac and everybody's favorite poem, everybody's favorite hip-hop poem, The Rose That Grew from Concrete. And we're going to do that as well. And now, after we've assessed these poems, you're going to write your own poem. But not only are you going to write your own poem, you're going to create a music video around your poem. Or you're going to create this poem collaboratively with your team, maybe your classmates, and we're going to write a poem based on these standards, based on this rubric. Then you're going to take that poem and turn it into a music video. Or you're going to take that poem, you're going to turn it into a comedy sketch. Something that you can post online in our class, YouTube channel. But then the school provides cameras and microphones and editing software and all of that. So now the kids are engaging in classwork that allows them to dive into a medium that they're already obsessed with. Like that's powerful right there. If we're teaching kids, algebraic equations, and they're like, man, this is too much, it's so hard, then how do we take the algebraic equation and say, we're going to take 2a squared times 3a, whatever equals to this, equals to x, and say now we're going to visually create something that allows us to express it through photography or through spoken word but whatever. We're going to create this thing and we're going to put it online so we could teach others how to do this thing. It's funny. I had one of my students who said years ago, Mister, I figured out how to do this problem because I didn't understand what the teacher was saying, so I went online and I found somebody who explained it in a way that was different, and I got it. Social media, content to benefit the child. They say that the best way to ensure that you know how to do something is that you have to teach it. Imagine if a class had a podcast just like this, maybe in groups of 4, they had time, this period, to sit down with your classmates and maybe they have a Socratic seminar on a podcast about the Revolutionary War, and the damage it did to the first peoples, even though the Americans were fighting the British. How did that impact the First Nations who were in the crossfires? And they can sit down there and have a podcast, and literally have a Socratic seminar around that topic. Maybe every week, a team of students do a overhead camera solving for the math problems for the question of the week, and it's posted on the school website. But see what I'm saying? No, there's all these opportunities that we are missing out on, because again, you want to get kids excited, put them at the driver's seat. Don't just teach them how to, be safe driving. Allow them to drive. And the fact of the matter is, schools have the resources. If you don't, I'm sure there are companies out there you can reach out to who are willing to take the tax write-off to give your school equipment and things like that. In some cases, it might just be this beauty right here, your phone. It could literally just be your phone. Like, hey guys, how many of you guys have an iPhone? And I'll tell you this right now. I taught a film class years ago, and we had no cameras. So I told the kids, listen, we're going to teach a film class. It was an elective course. We're going to harness the power of your phone to make a movie. And I asked in the classroom, who has an iPhone? And that was the point. I mean, almost everybody had an iPhone. And what I did is I moved kids around so somebody in the group had an iPhone. And I was like, listen, all you're going to do is make a 5-minute film. We're gonna script it out. We're gonna storyboard it out, and you're gonna use your phone to record it. However you do it, I don't care about shaky whatever. You're gonna produce something you're gonna be proud of. And the kids did it. Listen, they did it, and I was like, some of the stuff that happened were amazing. I had a student, Carlos. And Carlos, if you're listening, he's a teacher now, a math teacher. They did some kind of weird like kung fu flick, and they were right here in the South Bronx by the courthouse, and they were like by the back stairs doing like these fake kung fu moves. It was all, and they made a movie on their iPhone. And it's funny because not a single kid in that classroom was not engaged. And they edited it in the iMovies, and this is an older version of iMovie, an older iPhone, but they were so into it. And they emailed it to me, and what I did, I think I had it on my laptop, and we projected it, and we had a film festival sharing our movies. Again, we know our kids are engaged they're engaged in social media, in these spaces, and we're saying that it's not a safe space for them. But what are we going to do about it? We can't turn off the internet. It's here to stay. There's nothing we can do about it. But now, the same way when the first calculators went to the classroom and people were like, bah humbug. We cannot have calculators in schools. Kids are going to get dumber. They need to learn how to do multiplications, freehand, long form, and long division. And guess what now? Calculators allowed us to accelerate in our thinking. Rather than trying to figure out the problem by hand, we were able to find solutions much quicker than allowing us to then eventually, do bigger, more complex problems and bigger and larger computers that allows us to now have things like rockets to go into space and landings on Mars and having particle accelerators. Those things couldn't have happened if we did it by hand. Technology allowed us to move forward. And at this point in time, we need to understand that if we're going to move forward, we have to allow what exists out there to come into our classrooms. But we have to curate how they come to our classrooms so that we can harness its power for the outcomes that we're looking for. I don't know if what I'm saying makes any sense to anybody, but again, I feel like we're missing the boat if we're not embracing digital communications. We're talking about visual, audio, and visual audio. I'm missing one. What's going on here? So graphic design, photography, video, audio recording, those things. We need to harness those things. But not only that, the 30-ton gorilla in the room, AI, we have to embrace that too. I've seen amazing things being done with AI in classrooms. Teachers who are thinking outside of the box. I heard about a teacher who said, hey, I'm going to teach you how to write an essay using AI that will not be detected as AI. And you're thinking, oh my God, he's teaching his kids how to cheat. But the amount of work they had to do, thinking, writing, reading, composing, change this, change that, so that the AI detector couldn't tell the difference between something that's written by a human being and itself. This was not a 5-minute lesson. This was I think it took the whole week, maybe 2, just to get to that point. But the whole entire time, what are the kids doing? They're reading, they're writing, they're thinking, they're asking questions. They're being tricked into doing the work that they didn't want to do, because by attempting to get an upper hand using technology, but realize that technology will only get you so far. You still need the genius of human beings, of your brain, to make technology work. So think about that. I'm going to wrap up and get my butt out of here. But again, something I want you to think about, like, how do we really, really, really say, okay, stop being scared, stop being afraid, stop being whatever, and let's start talking about how do we now move truly into the present, because we're still teaching and educating in the past. All right, y'all, this is Uche Njoku, Sneaker Principal, and I'll talk to y'all soon. All right, peace.